Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody is having a beautiful week. I'm continuing to hang out with my parents. As I've told you, they're here. They've been here since right before New Year's, and they'll be here till the end of March. Just been doing a lot of hanging out, watching TV. Of course, we watched the Steelers this past weekend. We watched the football championship between Alabama and Clemson. Mom and Dad love Family Feud and Jeopardy. All of those, like what I would call old people programs, but I enjoy them as well. We sometimes find some Seinfeld reruns, which are nice. And as you know, I find my own Seinfeld reruns online to watch. And I also watch sometimes if I'm bored, I go to YouTube and you can watch outtakes from Seinfeld and explanations behind some of the different episodes, which I also find fascinating. Being that I'm a writer, I love finding out how other writers and authors, filmmakers come up with their stories, so that is always fascinating to me. So we're having a good time so far. And we'll get together, continue to get together. I'm looking forward to the Steeler game on Sunday. As you know, I haven't been watching any of the games. I've only started watching the last 2 weeks when it looked like they'd be in the playoffs. And so I'll be looking forward to the game on Sunday against the Denver Broncos. And that's going to be a tough one. If they have to play without Ben and Antonio Brown, I don't give them much hope. Without either one of them, I could see maybe a possibility, but without both of them, forget it. During the show, you can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Of course, you can email me anytime. And during the show, if you wish to comment about it, you can go to Twitter. And my handle there is Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. So let's get right to the show. So the State of the Union happened. I didn't watch it, just like I told you that I wouldn't. But it seems it went just about as I predicted, although I'm surprised to find that he didn't say anything about guns. That's interesting. And he didn't mention anything about the sailors who got caught in Iran waters. And I want to talk about that. That's going to be my first topic of the day. But I give a lot of credit to all of you who did watch it. I could see it on my Twitter feed. I saw on some blogs today. Of course, a lot of people, I don't know why you people put yourselves through the torture of it. I don't know what you get out of it. Maybe you think that it's your civic responsibility to watch it. Maybe it allows you to throw things at your TV. But you must have some really strong cast iron stomachs to watch it. To sit there and have the guy lie to your face, make fun of you, and then you tune in for it. That's not the kind of person that I am. I'm not going to show up for something and allow myself to be made fun of if I can't respond. You know, I have a hard time watching the debates. Now, I watched the last debate. That was fine because I ended up appearing on another show on Red State Talk Radio to talk about it. So I felt a little bit of responsibility to do that, and I took notes and everything. And those debates are tough for me to get through because I know how I would answer the questions. But I don't feel necessarily like any one of the men and the one woman, Carla Fiorina, are necessarily making fun of me, even though I know that I disagree with each one of those people on a variety of topics, even though I consider myself to be a conservative, and most of them consider themselves to be conservative. What gets to me when I watch debates is I know that I could answer the questions better than those candidates could. Of course, I'm not running for office. But when the issue is Barack Obama giving a speech, whether it's just him giving a speech by choice or it's something that is mandated by the Constitution, I'm not motivated to watch. In fact, I don't know if I watched any of George W. Bush's State of the Union speeches either, but for different reasons. But the last thing I'm going to do is tune in, spend an hour of my time being insulted. And I don't know what I can get out of it and then bring to you. I don't know if there's anything helpful that I would hear or see during that speech that could be brought to you in any meaningful way. If you want to watch it, I can't stop you. But I'm not going to bring that sort of information to you because I just don't know how useful it is. Whether it's a Republican or a Democrat giving a State of the Union speech, most of what happens in those never occurs. Whatever is said, whatever predictions, whatever the president says he's going to do in the next year and the way he sees the United States and its place in the world is usually not accurate. This program, that program, we're going to spend money here, we're going to spend money there. We're going to make fun of the Democrats. We're going to make fun of the Republicans. Barack Obama's going to make fun of conservatives. And the economy's just fine. And I just am not going to put myself through that. I'll be much better off just doing my own reading, going to my own website, the websites that I go to, the news that I read, and bring that to you. I think that is much more helpful, and it's a better use of my time, of which it is limited. So, but just the scanning that I did of what was said about it last night, for once you'd love to be surprised, right? But with any politician and what they're going to say, you'd love to be surprised. A little bit of a breath of fresh air. Can't get it. Not going to happen. Barack Obama did just about what I thought he would. And once again, I'm glad that I just totally tuned out. Now let's get to this Iran situation. There were 10 sailors, and a couple boats broke down. Maybe one broke down and the other came to the aid. Some of the details, even as I do this show, are at least still a little sketchy. It sounds like one boat broke down, maybe another one. Then there's these small little, they're like, I would call them attack boats, but they have some other name for them. But they have to be some of the smallest boats. I mean, you can't even call them ships. They're so small. They're boats. They have to be some of the smallest boats in the U.S. Navy. And they kind of remind me of those PT boats that like John F. Kennedy was on in World War II that would kind of do hunt for submarines and things like that. Like they're big like motorboats. Well, they were over there in the Gulf near Iran. One of them broke down. Maybe the other one came to its aid, and they drifted into Iran territory, into the Iran within so many miles of Iran that is they went from international waters into Iranian waters, and it doesn't seem to me at this point anybody's disputing that. Iran shows up, takes the sailors into custody, takes the boats, detains them for not even a day. I think it was something like 14 hours. Over half a day, but not quite a day. And now already those sailors are back in the U.S. Navy on a ship being tended to. Maybe they're asking, hey, what happened while you were in custody? What questions were you asked? On and on and on. And on some conservative websites, which is still a little unbelievable to me, people are saying that this is an act of war. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. See, I try to put myself, because a lot of people say, well, this is outrageous. What Iran should have done was, if those boats really did go into Iran territory, that Iran should have come out and see if those ships needed aid and just waited until another vessel from the American Navy could show up, pull those boats out, and that would have been the right way to handle this. And then there's this allegation that maybe John Kerry apologized for what happened. Whereas, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of an American sailor who's in one of those boats that's off the coast of Iran. Instead of thinking about this in terms of act of war, let's just get inside one of those guys' heads. And then I guess there was one woman involved too. There were nine male sailors and one female sailor. And there's no allegations they were harmed. They weren't tortured. There were pictures of them while they were being detained. Look a little worried, but nobody's bloodied. There aren't any bruises. See, my expectation would be, if I'm a sailor off the coast of Iran and I stray into Iran waters, I would fully expect to be detained. I think I would. My idea would be, I want to stay out of their waters, even though I know about this Iran deal and everything, but I know down deep Iran hates us. And I would expect, if I drift in there, that they're going to want to do something about it. In fact, that Iran handled our sailors and got them back. I'm not saying anything good about them, but that's, Joe, it went just about the way I would expect if I were a sailor in the American Navy. I don't see these ideas that, well, Iran should have just sat there with the boats and waited for an American destroyer or somebody to show up, is not rational. I know that that's the way we think of ourselves, that Iran should be afraid of us, and they should be afraid of taking our sailors into custody and all that. I'm not sure the sailors were thinking that. The sailors were thinking, I want to stay out of their waters because I might get detained if I get caught. I'm not saying they wanted to go there on purpose. I'm not saying they went in there on purpose. But I'm sure that those sailors were trying to avoid Iranian waters because they knew what the outcome would be. And it wouldn't be that Iran would just come out and say, hey, fellas, what happened? Oh, you had a breakdown. Oh, well, you call your fellow Navy out there, maybe your sailors out there in another ship. They'll come in and pick you up, and we'll just kind of hang out, and we'll talk about the Iran deal, and we'll talk about how you're allowing us to make nuclear weapons, and we'll be talking about how Iran hates the United States, and we'll just all hang out here for an hour, and we'll just wait until one of your ships shows up. Is that really the way you conservatives, my fellow conservatives, think it should have went, or should have gone, to use correct English? I just don't think that's rational. I think every sailor who's on a ship in the Middle East, in the Gulf, near Iran, understands you go into Iran waters, that they're probably going to detain you. Now, if there is some different amount of facts out there, that different collection of facts, I should say, that says that our sailors weren't in Iran waters, but they were in international waters, okay, then that changes a little bit. That changes things a little bit. Then I could see, yeah, that's a little bit provocative. And I know about what happened, when was it, last week, that Iran fired a missile within 1,500 yards of an aircraft carrier. If you don't know how far 1,500 yards is, that's 4,500 feet. That is less than a mile. So if the American Navy is not going to do anything about that, then about a missile being fired within a mile, of a ship, then what's it going to do about 10 sailors being taken into custody, being taken to the shores of Iran after they drifted into Iranian waters? This just doesn't seem that unreasonable. I think back to what happened in 2001. Had it not been for September 11th in 2001, you know what the biggest crisis would have been that year? And I think it happened in April of 2001. April of 2001, I'm going to say it was when that reconnaissance plane, what was it, a P-3 Orion, something like that, and a Chinese jet fighter got too close. The jet fighter hit our plane. The pilot of the Chinese fighter did not survive, but the American pilot of this P-3, I think it was an Orion plane, some sort of reconnaissance plane with propellers, not jets on it. The only place it was able to land was in Chinese territory. It wasn't the Chinese mainland, but it was an island of China where it landed. And everybody on that plane were detained. And once again, I think that there was at least one woman amongst that crew, and it was over 10 people. But they were detained, and I remember at the time reading how this is just outrageous, and this could cause a crisis, and all this. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it's not. No, it's not. China's going to do their thing. They're going to ask the pilots, why they were there, what happened. They're going to see if they can gain any knowledge from looking at the plane, see if they can rip off anything, because that's what China does, military secrets. And when they're done, they'll just hand the people back. And that's exactly what happened. Those servicemen and women were handed back, no worse for wear, and we all went on our way. And we were just fine until September 11th happened. This Iranian thing is like that. An unfortunate set of circumstances. You have China, which is paranoid. And dare I say it, if that happened today, despite China's military being provocative these days with them building a runway on an island out in international waters, if the same thing happened today and a Chinese jet and one of our aircraft hit, and our aircraft had to land on a Chinese island or even on the Chinese mainland, the same thing would happen. We'd get all of those people back into the United States, no problem. There wouldn't be any threats or anything like that. No saber rattling. They just kind of make sure that they don't look weak in the rest of the world's eyes, and would get our people back. What happened in Iran is no different than that. A couple places they brought up the Iran hostage situation back in the late 70s. Totally different situation. The difference being Iran was allowing those people to be there. They were at our embassy, which is technically American soil in the middle of Iran. And then when the Ayatollah took over, they nixed that agreement. They went in, they attacked our embassy, took those people hostage. Totally different situation. Now that could be considered an act of war. Not boats drifting into Iran territory by accident. The sailors being taken to shore. What did they want to I'm not sure what we wanted to happen. Did we just expect Iran to stay away and we wanted to let those people just drift until they hit the beaches of Iran? Just not sure what the alternate scenario was supposed to be within reason. Do we really expect the Iran Navy to show up, hang out with our sailors, and crack jokes back and forth? I know that being that we're supposed to be the strong United States, that we want everybody to be afraid of us. Well, you have to be really afraid if you take our sailors into custody. Do you really believe it's an act of war, this? It just seems like total hysteria to me. I know that Iran's an enemy. I know they're horrible. Now, if this was North Korea, something different. Then my expectations would be different. Why? Because they're really are kooks. Now, the Iranians are kooks, but just in a different way. We realize that dealing with Iran and dealing with North Korea are two different situations, even though they're both evil. Whereas when it comes to North Korea, if a ship would drift into its waters, who knows what would happen? And I think that's what you have to compare it to. We know what would happen. Those sailors would still be in North Korean custody. They'd all be called spies, and they'd all be brought in some kangaroo court in North Korea. And that's probably the reason that you don't have any American Navy vessels drifting too close to their waters, probably. Kind of give them a little bit of space. If we do anything, it's from the air, it's from satellites, maybe submarines, but certainly not from boats that are no bigger than the boats I would see out here in Tampa Bay. So I'm just not as crazed about this as other people are. Iran, you also have to look at it this way. Iran has gotten everything that it wants from us, much to conservatives' anger. Why would they do anything up to upset us? They're getting everything they want. They did the absolute minimum. The Navy did the absolute minimum to save face. The leaders can say, well, we checked them out. They can say to the Iranian people, well, these Americans, we checked them out. We didn't show weakness. We didn't just let them go on their way. We took them into custody. We make sure they weren't spying, and we let them go. Look how strong we are. That's all it is. Whereas they're afraid if they're seen as being too easy on the United States, that could cause problems for the leaders of Iran. So they kind of cut it in between. Weren't too hard, weren't too soft, which is exactly what I would expect, simply because I remember what happened with China back in 2001. A plane in distress lands there. China cuts the difference. Doesn't immediately let them go. Doesn't take our word for what went on. They looked into it themselves. But on the other hand, they didn't hold those airmen and women for months either. I forget how long they were held now. It was longer than 14 hours. They were held, they were fed, they were taken care of, they got to sleep, nobody was tortured, and then they were let go. When you're dealing with these countries, I don't know what else the expectations could be. Well, they're just not afraid of us. I think they are afraid of us. Because if they truly weren't afraid of us, those airmen who got caught in 2001, they still might be in China. And if Iran with these sailors, they still might be in Iran. If they weren't afraid of us. But you just can't, on the other hand, expect these people, these Iranians, just throw their hands up and say, okay, we'll take care of these people really lightly. We'll just sit here with them until another Navy ship can come along. That is not realistic. You have to put your pride in your country and your ego for your country and everything to the side. And once again, put yourself in the mind of one of these sailors. I think the sailors know. You get caught in Iran waters, you're probably going to get taken to Iran. I don't think the expectation for these sailors is, okay, we could just drift into Iran waters at any time, and if we get caught, they'll just let us go. They'll come over, we'll crack a few jokes, we'll say ahoy, they'll say ahoy. Do you need some help? They'll just act like the American Coast Guard. I do not think that your average sailor in the Middle East thinks that. And in fact, if any of these sailors get to be interviewed at some point down the road, I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime soon, but I suspect that they'll just say, you know what, we drifted in there, they came out, yes, they were suspicious of us, they took us to land, we got to sit around, lie around for some hours, they gave us something to eat, then we got let go. No big deal. I just don't know in today's world if you can expect anything better than that. Considering that despite what Iran and the United States, the deals that we've made, we know who the Iranians are at their core. We have to forget the deals that we made with them. We have to look at who we know they are. And they're evil people who have financed terrorism all around the world, and it hates the United States. And they let our sailors go within 14 hours, and we're ticked about it. It just seems a little weird. And it certainly really seems weird when it's called an act of war. In that way, I just cannot get with my fellow conservatives on that. So let's move on to something else. These terrorist attacks, didn't have a chance to talk about them in Iraq and Turkey. The one in Iraq, I believe, happened. Did it happen first? I think it did. The one that's furthest in the past. This certainly does remind me of Paris. Does it not do that to you? I think that no matter what President Obama said during his State of the Union speech about ISIS last night, and I know it was a topic, ISIS is getting a little bit more refined, don't you think? That they can time an attack in Iraq where I have it written down here that 18 people were dead. There was a mall where there was an attack, and then at some cafe somewhere. This is the second time within 2 months, going back to Paris, where they've coordinated something outside of their own area at multiple venues, multiple people getting killed. Of course, we can't forget what happened in San Bernardino, but maybe that was a little bit of a different situation. It was definitely a terrorist attack, but something a little bit different. But in Iraq, multiple gunmen, multiple venues, coordinated, time down to the second. And I think what Barack Obama doesn't understand, or who knows what he thinks, who knows. The problem is if you let this go, they're only going to get better at it. And likewise with Turkey. Now, Turkey maybe is a little bit different situation. It's right next to, the fighting that's going on in Syria. This was a suicide bomber, much more of a traditional type of terrorist attack than the one in Iraq, the one in Paris. Didn't take as much timing and expertise, I would say. This guy just with a suicide vest just went to a tourist area and blew himself up, killing 10 foreigners, 9 are from Germany. But ISIS is going to get better at these types of coordinated attacks, multiple people, multiple venues, if we can't stop them. They're no different than a serial killer refining his craft and getting better at it. And so as we continue to let them get away with this, we can just expect more of these situations where multiple people get killed, multiple venues, where the timing, their actions are much more military-like than just hapless terrorism. Just chaos. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk.
Red State Talk Radio, feeding the hunger.
Hey, this is Alfonso Rachel with PJTV, Zone Nation, and the founder and drummer of 20 Pound Sledge, and you're listening to RedStateTalkRadio.com, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio.
I'm a mom, and just like millions of other women, that's why I own guns. We're responsible, we're law-abiding, and we're everything that makes America strong. Every day we're willing to use a firearm to defend our families. But the media will never tell those stories. If a mom puts a gun to the face of a home-invading thug and makes him run for his life, the story gets buried. But if she's unarmed and murdered, the cameras will be at the scene before the police. It's time for moms like me to speak out. We are the majority. We demand the freedom to defend our families. And we challenge the media to tell the truth about our rights. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
What does it mean for a country when its citizens turn on the news and expect to be misled? Because the reporters who once served as freedom's fearless watchdogs feel like distant characters in a fading memory. Today, too many journalists are just actors, playing to their boss's script. Why tell the truth when you can sell a lie for more? There's a price to pay for all this dishonesty. If the free press won't protect free people, it's our job to demand they do it. Do the work you say you do. Aim your First Amendment against hypocrisy and corruption like a hammer of the people. Kick down the doors of any leader who deceives us, and never tolerate dishonesty from your own ranks. That's what the good guys demand. We're the 5 million men and women in the National Rifle Association of America, and we will not play along. Join us today.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio. And if you don't go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not doing enough. Join me late night Tuesday, early Wednesday, 12:05 a.m. for Cowboy Logic Radio on RedStateTalkRadio.com.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Let's move on to something else. In the first part of the show, I covered Iran and their detaining of 10 American sailors and then letting them go. And then right there at the end, I talked about these terrorist attacks in Iraq and Turkey, and it seems to me that ISIS is refining its methods, and it's going to continue to do so as it commits more of these acts. They're just going to get better at what they're doing. And if the President of the United States can't see that, doesn't want to see it, ignores it, then the entire world is in trouble. Let's move on to something else. the response to the State of the Union. If there's ever been a situation that's been tone deaf recently, it's this. I've told you my attitude toward the State of the Union. I have to tell you, I don't even know why the opposing party does a response to the State of the Union. Because, see, my attitude has always been, if you're responding to somebody, then you're giving that person credibility. That's why, for the most part, on Twitter, for example, if somebody sends me some F-bomb or something like that, I just don't respond. If somebody wants to engage me, some liberal wants to engage me without the snarkiness, then I'll try to do that for at least a little while. I'll have a back and forth exchange, and then I'll just say, hey, you can have the last word on that, and I'll just move on to something else. Because I'm not going to have a back and forth, 20 back and forths, 30 back and forths over the internet. And I've told all of you, do not argue with people over the internet. You want to have a slight discussion? Okay, but that's about it. But here we have Nikki Haley, of all people, being asked to give the State of the Union response. If you want to see the problem, the big problem with the Republican leadership, and I don't want to call it establishment, but the Republican leadership, because Nikki Haley was chosen by Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan to give this response. This is the problem. We can get into how she brought up Donald Trump and all that, but just her as being the selection tells me something, and it's not good. She could have gone up there and said anything, and I probably would have not liked it, whether it was about Donald Trump or not. And she admitted today, being asked about how, she's talking about anger and emotion and being, aggressiveness. And she did say that was directed mainly toward Donald Trump. And even though I'm no fan of Donald Trump, that is a mistake on her part. But let's first talk about her as the selection. You know why they selected her? Because she's a woman. I think we're playing the same game that the Democrats try to play. This is no different than when I've talked about Ben Carson. You know what's fascinating to most conservatives about Ben Carson? He's a black conservative. I'm not saying I don't think we're racist, but it's clear to me that if Ben Carson were white, he couldn't have gotten the support that he has. Likewise, for example, Mia Love, the representative from Utah. Same way. If she's a white guy and says all the exact same things, nobody pays. Yeah, I'm glad that she won. But if she's a white guy, nobody pays attention. She's just another white guy. I know that sentence seems funny. Winning in Utah. Imagine that. But conservatives latch on to these people because they aren't white and because they're not men. And all I'm worried about is if they're conservative or not. And I think the reason these people get attention is because of their skin color, which I thought as conservatives we're not supposed to see that. And when it comes to politics and conservatism, we're not supposed to see a person's gender. I thought that that's what Democrats do. That's what liberals do. We have to vote for this person. We have to show support for this person because he or she is black. We have to show support for this woman because she's a woman. We have to show support for this transgendered person because they're transgendered. And oh, by the way, yeah, they better be liberal too. I thought that we were the ideology of just judging people on whether their politics were right or not. When it comes to politics, now in our social lives, maybe that's something different. Then we just judge, is the person friendly? Is the person kind? Are they giving? Anything like that. But in politics, all we're worried about is they're conservative or not, and it shouldn't matter if they're black, if they're a woman, if they're transgendered, or whatever else. But getting back to Nikki Haley, she was picked. I mean, she's certainly not as popular as she was when she got elected to be governor of South Carolina. And dare I say it, she's once again another politician that the Tea Party got behind, and she hasn't been exactly as conservative as would like. But there are rumors out there that she might be selected to be the running mate for whoever does get the Republican nomination. Once again, why? Because she's a woman. Not because she's the most conservative. Not because she's the most consistent. Not because she can deliver a certain section of the country. I mean, she's a governor from South Carolina, a state that has no chance of going Democrat in 2016. So they pick her in the first place, which is a horrible selection. And then on top of that, her message. And what the Republican leadership doesn't quite understand, and I know that I think about this when the topic of Donald Trump comes up on this show, and I feel that I must talk about something that happened regarding him, is that there's certainly this parent-child kind of relationship going on there. And what I mean by that is, as a parent, especially if you have a daughter, you have to certainly handle her taste in boys very, very carefully. If you show too much support for the guy, the girl will maybe think, oh, this boy isn't cool enough, and reject him. If you show too much hatred or dislike for a certain boy, that may just drive your daughter more into that boy's arms. So then you have her sneaking out at night when she's 15 to meet this kid over at the parking lot of the Walmart. Stuff like that. So as a parent, and I even know this not having kids, but I read enough about it, and I was a teenager at one time too, believe it or not, that it doesn't help then when, for example, even myself, when I talk so badly about Donald Trump, there is a part of me that always has to remind, don't do it so much that you drive Trump supporters to like him even more. When you do talk about Trump, you have to do it in a very objective way. And sometimes you want to say things about him, but sometimes you got to know when not to say anything at all. And we're getting to the point with Jeb Bush coming out against Trump, and now Nikki Haley using a State of the Union response speech to talk about him, that they don't understand that analogy of the parent and the daughter. By them doing this, they are almost guaranteeing that these Trump supporters will never change their mind. The truth is, if you wanted to peel off some of that Trump support, and you wanted to do it in a way like a State of the Union speech, you have to have somebody there who isn't seen as part of the Republican leadership, or to use somebody else's term, the Republican establishment. And they should have picked somebody like David Bratt, who has a 100% conservative review rating. He was the one who, I can't remember his name right at this second, but he's the one that took over that district in Virginia from the right-hand man of John Boehner. Or the Republican leadership could have picked somebody like Mike Lee, senator, who could have done that speech and maybe talked about the anger that's going out there. And then one of those guys would have had the credibility to speak out against Donald Trump. Nikki Haley does not. That's what I think this Republican leadership doesn't get. Now, granted, this started, I would say, I mean, it's going on for a long time, but probably that last debate, Jeb Bush and Donald Trump having those exchanges, I think they ended up pretty... There's people out there who watched that debate and thought that Jeb Bush got the better of Donald Trump. I didn't see it. To me, it ended up pretty 50-50. Pretty even. They battled each other to a stalemate, I thought. But since then, they've kind of tried the same tactics against Donald Trump, and they haven't been working, mainly because they're using the wrong people, and they don't understand what causes people to be infatuated with Donald Trump. The problem is the leadership doesn't want to show any love for true conservatives either. That's why David Brat doesn't get picked. That's why Mike Lee doesn't get picked. So it's almost like they'd rather continue to pick the leadership types, the people who are, more part of that fraternity, and deliver the message instead of finding the right person to deliver that message. To me, you have to pick one or the other. If that's the message you want for a State of the Union response speech, then you have to pick somebody who's different. But if you're going to pick Nikki Haley, then you can't go up and make fun of Donald Trump. You have to pick one. If they wanted to pick Nikki Haley, she just should have kept it to responding to Barack Obama. Granted, I don't know why we do response speeches anyway. That's one more. I know that that's not part of the Constitution. I know the State of the Union is, but the response surely is not. I don't know exactly when it got started, but the sooner that's ended, the happier I'll be too. Just let people get on with their evenings. I just don't get it. It seems to me that there is certainly a large part of theater going on here, and that's why I said in yesterday's show, feels like a three-ring circus to me. So you had the three-ring circus with the State of the Union, and then as people were leaving the venue, you had somebody else outside putting on a show as well. Then that's the State of the Union response speech. Oh. Bad selection on our part, but I know it's only because she is a woman. And we got to get away from that. Just pick the best conservative and just forget about what their gender and race is, please. And understand that the message matters and the messenger matters. If you, establishment, to use your word, somebody else's word, establishment types really despise Donald Trump, the best thing you can do is stop talking about him. Just stop talking about him. If you have a message that excludes Donald Trump, then work on that one. And allow others who have a little bit more credibility, dare I say it, who are more conservative, to work on those Trump supporters. The exact reason that these Trump supporters go to Donald Trump is because of you guys, not because of conservatives. So the more you talk badly about Donald Trump, you only reinforce what his supporters think about you in the first place. Remember that. Likewise, with the parent and the daughter who has an attraction to bad boys, the worst thing a parent can do is trash that boy around the dinner table. The best thing a parent can do is probably say, oh, that's you're gonna, oh, okay. Well, he seems like a nice guy. I'm really, really going to enjoy getting to meet him. I know that takes a lot of courage on a parent's part. The parents also have to understand that most girls grow out of that. Even in the 21st century. It's just a phase. Some girls don't, and that sucks. But most women do. Although, we all end up making maybe bad decisions at least once or twice in our lives with the people that we date. But that phase usually passes. So you have to remember that as a parent, and to demonize it too much could only prolong it. And likewise, showing too much liking of a girl that your daughter is dating could also have the same effect of her dumping the guy. You have to know how to play it. And that is something it seems the establishment in the Republican Party doesn't understand. Donald Trump is going to be harmed by one person probably in the end alone, and that is Donald Trump. And that's something I've been saying for months. It goes back to the first debate. The best thing you can do going into the debates, just rely on your own message, because anything you say about Donald Trump is just going to be ammunition. So allow him to determine his own fate. And it seems to me the more that the Nikki Haley types talk about him, the more strength he gets. And how they don't see that, I don't know. I see it. And that's why on this show, I pick my spots. One more thing before I want to go. This has to do with a little exchange between Ann Coulter and Liz Mayer, who I suppose I'm supposed to know. Her last name is Mair. I suppose I'm supposed to know her, but I don't. But she had a really good exchange with Ann Coulter recently, within the last few days. And this just shows you how far some of our conservative establishment media types have gotten off the rails. I just had this conversation with my dad yesterday about how these people are famous because of the conservatism that they've been selling for years. They've made millions and millions of dollars off of it. But we as a country don't have much to show for it. And it seems we've put them in a situation where, well, if conservatism doesn't succeed, that's not really Rush Limbaugh's fault or Ann Coulter's fault or Mark Levin's fault. That's somebody else's fault. But if conservatism succeeds, then we give all the credit to these people who have been talking about it for years. It's like they're in a no-lose situation. And anybody I find out is in that type of situation, I'm bothered by it. It seems to be then there's a bit of subjectivity going on instead of objectivity. And I think that hurts all the regular conservatives out here. I consider myself to be just a regular guy. So with Ann Coulter, well-known conservative, she says that her perfect, in this exchange with Liz Mayer, says her perfect ticket would be Donald Trump and Mitt Romney. To which Liz Mayer said, and that shows that you are absolutely not at all a conservative. And there's even a little blog posting at Red State, not Red State Talk Radio, but redstate.com about this. How Ann Coulter is showing herself to be the one issue fraud that she is. And he's right. But she's up there. She's making good money doing this. Not helping the cause at all. You cannot call yourself conservative if Donald Trump and Mitt Romney is your perfect ticket. But this is the complaint I've had about conservative leaders in media for years now, and I'm glad I get to talk about it at Red State Talk Radio. But I've come to the end of the show. I remind you can find my books at Amazon.com. Just do a search for Edward Dentzel, science fiction, if you're into that. EdwardDentzel.com is my website. You can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows there. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book. to download the free first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can find my show at SoundCloud, Podbean, and YouTube. You can find it in the iTunes Store in the podcast section. You can find me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. Email me, edwarddentzel.com, edwarddentzel@reagan.com. I hope you all have a great night. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.